In this video I'm going to build a picnic table. At my school we're going to do a project in a couple of weeks in which we want to build some picnic tables for our school garden together with students. In this video I'm going to build one of the tables in advance to test the design and the materials and to make sure we have a proper documentation of the process. If you want to do the same with young people or with students, make sure that you know all the safety precautions, that you teach the students how to handle the tools properly, and that perhaps those students might not be allowed to use all the tools. For example, some power tools might be forbidden for the use of students. So don't take this as an instructional video on how to do it. It's just a documentation of how I did it, and it's not necessarily the case that our students are going to do everything that you see me doing in the video. So if you want to do it, once again, make sure you keep safety in mind and don't do anything foolish. And now enjoy the video. This is what the picnic table is going to look like. The basic design, which I modified to my needs and my materials, is by a Canadian man called Ken, who put it up on the web long ago. I'll put the link to his site into the description. Here are the materials that I used. I would have liked to use plate head screws for the tabletop instead of the hexagon head screws, because the plate head screws are easier to work with and you don't need washers, but my hardware store didn't have the right length. I started out by cutting the 4 meter long boards roughly in half, because the table is going to be about 2 meters long. This is just a rough freehand cut. The clean rectangular cut will be among the last things to do on the table. Next I laid out the boards on the floor and put spaces between them to give them the right distance to each other. I measured the width to cut the 3 struts that are holding the tabletop together. These struts are about 5 centimeters shorter than the tabletop's width. The struts have a 60-degree angle, which I cut with a handsaw. The middle strut gets turned by 90 degrees so that its wide side is set against the tabletop. This is because it's going to get a 45mm hole where the post of a parasol will be put in. I beveled all edges with a file. Then I laid out the struts on the tabletop and made sure that all distances were symmetrical. I marked the positions of the struts with a pencil so that I could easily find them again later. Then I marked the positions of the holes in the struts. The screws are going through these holes, 2 per board. After that I drilled the holes. The screws should be able to move in the holes because the board which they hold will shrink and expand with moisture and temperature changes. So I drilled slot holes. This technique of putting 2 holes next to each other is not ideal and not very accurate, but it works alright in this situation. Make sure your drill bit is strong enough though, and you don't make it break when you wiggle it. This is an 8mm drill bit which works fine. If you use a thinner one, I'd be much more cautious. Then it was time to assemble the tabletop. Make sure you use shorter screws with the middle strut because it's turned on its side and therefore it is thinner. At the end I tightened all screws with a spanner. I do this because by hand it's easier to feel how tight the screw should be. And so the tabletop is roughly finished. I went on to find the proper angle and height for the legs. A 58-degree angle and the height of the tabletop at about 72 centimeters turned out best for me. I cut the legs to length and to the 58 degrees, and then I attached them to the struts of the tabletop using clamps. If you work on your own, these one-hand clamps are very useful. If you have another person who can help you, a regular clamp will just work fine. To secure that setup, I also attached a piece of scrap to the bottom of the legs so that the angles wouldn't move so easily. Still, before drilling the holes, I double-checked the angle. I marked the holes and drilled them through the struts and the table legs. Then I put in the carriage bolts with the lock nuts. So this is the end of part 1. Thanks for watching, and be sure to watch part 2 in which I finish this build. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate if you subscribe. It always motivates.